You have a password, probably several. A browser history you've already decided no one will ever see. Maybe a specific folder on your desktop with a very innocent-sounding name that is absolutely not innocent. That instinct, that almost physical need to have something that's just yours, where did it come from? Because the guy chipping away at a spear point 40,000 years ago, did he also want sometimes to just be left alone? Let's start with what privacy actually is at its core. Strip away the phones, the passwords, the locked doors. What you have left is this: information or space that you control and others don't. That's it. Which means privacy doesn't need a door, it doesn't need walls, it just needs the ability to conceal something. And humans, even the really old ones, were spectacular at concealing things. Primatologists studying chimpanzees have documented deliberate deception in the wild. A chimp hiding food from a dominant male. A chimp pretending to be completely uninterested in a female when a rival is watching, then circling back later when the rival leaves. Strategic concealment. Performed indifference. Chimps and humans diverged about 6 million years ago, which means the roots of privacy-related behavior might be 6 million years old. We didn't invent sneakiness, we just got very, very good at it. Go back to 300,000 years ago. Homo sapiens is brand new. The world is lions, mammoths, rival groups of humans who will ruin your day, and 0 hospitals. And archaeologists have found burial sites from this period. People buried with ochre pigment, shell beads, deliberate positioning, grave goods placed with care. You don't do that unless the person you just buried was a someone, an individual, a person with an inner life distinct from everyone else's, which implies, even 300,000 years ago, a concept of self. The sense that the person who died was not just a unit of the group. They were a specific someone with their own relationship to the world, their own story. Here's why that matters for privacy. If you have a concept of self, you almost inevitably develop a concept of mine versus yours. My thoughts versus your thoughts. Information that belongs to me versus information that belongs to everyone. You can't have a self without having a private self. Now, let's talk about where ancient humans actually lived, because the lack of architecture tells a fascinating story. For most of the Stone Age, humans lived in bands of roughly 20 to 50 people. The same 20 to 50 people. Every meal, every night, sleeping within arm's reach of each other. Knowing everyone's cough, everyone's sleep schedule, everyone's relationship drama. Whether you wanted to or not. There is no door to close. There is no, I'll be in my room. So was privacy just impossible? Not exactly. Anthropologists who study modern hunter-gatherer societies have found something consistent across radically different cultures. Even in extremely communal settings, people carve out privacy, not with walls, but with social agreements, unspoken rules. If someone turns away from the group and faces the wall, you leave them alone. If someone goes into the forest in a particular direction, nobody follows. These invisible walls are just as real as physical ones. Sometimes more so, because breaking them is a serious social offense. There's no, I didn't realize. When the rules live in the culture, everyone knows exactly what they're doing. Privacy doesn't need architecture, it needs agreement. And ancient humans were perfectly capable of making and keeping agreements. Now let's talk about sex. In most animals, reproduction is basically public. Nobody's embarrassed. Nobody's waiting for the others to leave. The baboons don't excuse themselves. But humans, even ancient ones, had a very different relationship with the situation. Anthropological evidence from hunter-gatherer societies across the world, the Amazon, the Kalahari, Papua New Guinea, consistently shows that sex is treated as something that should happen away from communal observation. Even in groups with no private sleeping spaces. Even where everyone essentially lives in the same room. People find ways. They go into the forest, they wait until others are asleep, they use the cover of darkness, they are deliberate about it. Why? Because in humans, sex is entangled with pair bonding, jealousy, status, alliance building, and social politics in a way it simply isn't for most animals. The moment sex becomes political, and in human societies it almost always does, it becomes something that needs to be hidden. Information about who's sleeping with whom is power. And power is something people protect. Our prehistoric ancestors were sneaking off into the bushes 40,000 years ago. The social consequences of being seen were very real and very immediate. Some things are simply eternal. Let's talk about the inner life, because this is where it gets genuinely strange. The famous cave paintings at Lascaux in France, Altamira in Spain, Chauvet, they date back 17,000 to 36,000 years. Horses, bison, aurochs, handprints, half-human figures. Extraordinary images made with real skill and care. And here's the thing about a lot of them. They're not near the entrance. They're not in the public area near the fire where people gathered. They're deep inside the caves. In chambers that required torches, required deliberate navigation through narrow passages in absolute darkness to reach. Why would you paint something in a place almost no one would ever see? One leading theory. These weren't public murals. They weren't decoration for the communal living room. They were private acts, maybe ritual, maybe spiritual, maybe something like prayer. Archaeologists have found, repeatedly and across multiple continents, that ancient humans kept personal items with no obvious functional use. A particular stone, shaped or colored a specific way, carried for hundreds of miles from where it was found. Ochre carved with geometric patterns that served no practical survival purpose, perforated shells, unusual fossils. These are not hunting tools. These are not food. These are identity objects, things that say, without words, I am a specific person. This thing is mine. And mine has an immediate implication historians don't talk about enough. If you have personal belongings, you have theft. You cannot have mine without the risk of someone disagreeing. And if you have theft, you have hiding places. Secrets about where you store valuables, concealment strategies. Secrets about where you hide things is just another layer of private life folded quietly inside the first. It goes all the way down. Around 10,000 years ago, humans start farming. Permanent settlements appear, and almost immediately the archaeological record starts showing something new. Rooms, separate spaces within dwellings, sleeping separated from cooking, cooking from storage, storage from where guests might enter. One of the earliest and most striking examples is Çatalhöyük, a Neolithic settlement in what is now Turkey, one of the world's oldest proto-cities, thousands of people at its peak. The houses have no exterior doors. None. You enter through a hole in the roof, you climb down a ladder into the house. Every home is sealed completely from the street level. To enter uninvited, someone has to descend through your ceiling. That is not an accident of engineering. That is a society with a fierce and very specific idea of the home as a protected private space. 9,500 years ago, before writing, before cities as we recognize them, already entry requires permission. The ancient Mesopotamians left us thousands of clay tablets, the world's first written records, and a significant portion of them are private communications, personal letters, business deals made quietly behind other people's backs, relationship tension, money problems, accumulated resentments you can feel through the clay. One of the oldest letters ever found, a Mesopotamian clay tablet from roughly 1750 BCE, is someone furiously complaining to a merchant who sold them substandard copper ingots, the world's oldest customer complaint. And in that tiny fragment, there's a private relationship between two specific people, a grievance being navigated outside of public view, a reputation being protected or attacked. The medium was different, the platform was harder to type on, but the basic dynamic, people managing information, protecting their interests, concealing things from some while revealing them to others, is structurally identical to what we do today. They were just like us. The desire for privacy didn't arrive with smartphones. It emerged with consciousness itself, with the moment humans became self-aware enough to understand they had an inner world that others couldn't access. Every cave painter who went deep into the earth to make something in the dark. Every prehistoric person who tucked a precious object somewhere the others wouldn't find it. Every Neolithic villager who sealed their house from the street and made visitors come in through the ceiling. Every ancient merchant managing a private grievance on a clay tablet. All of them had private lives. You, right now, with your passwords and your browser history, you're not doing anything new. Privacy is not a feature of civilization. It's a feature of being human. And apparently we've been guarding it since before we even had words for it. Leave a comment with the most private thing about you that you're actually willing to share.